Plot twists rank among the most unforgettable moments from storytelling history. Janet Leigh's shock early exit, it was Earth all along, I am your father, zoinks, it was Mr. Wickles the whole time, etc, etc. All great surprises that add a whole new dimension to the stories in question, cementing them as classics. Of course, sometimes accepting a twist means taking a lot on faith. Let's face it, the revelation of Luke Skywalker's parentage in The Empire Strikes Back does rather come out of nowhere, and if you think it all through logically, it makes very little sense that Vader would reveal it at that point rather than doing anything about it in the years prior. Still, while in the case of Star Wars we can suspend disbelief just a tad, there have been other attempts at big surprise plot twists that don't really stand up to closer scrutiny. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, back from learning to love Hamilton the musical to bring you 10 weird movie plot twists that just don't work. And spoiler alert as well, obviously, because we're talking about plot twists, so we're going to be ruining plot twists, but these plot twists kind of sucked anyway, so meh. Number 10, Dumbledore's Secret Brother, Fantastic Beasts 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Even though J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series finished way back in 2007, it hasn't stopped the author from changing the lore, again and again. The most famous one obviously is Dumbledore being gay, but there's loads. But with that in mind, turning to the latest Fantastic Beasts film, at the end it turned out that Ezra Miller's Credence wasn't a brand new character exclusive to the spin-off at all, but actually Aurelius, Dumbledore's lost secret brother. It's actually the kind of twist that's pretty effective in the moment, as long-time fans assumed they had a handle on the mythology by now, and suddenly there's a new mystery to unravel. But it's a mystery that doesn't really make that much sense. Not only has Dumbledore's vague family tree been relied on a bit too much for shock twists, but between the convoluted way the surprise is actually rolled out, and the questions surrounding why he's never been mentioned before, and the whole thing just adds baggage to a spin-off series that's already getting a bit flabby under the weight of its own lore. Number 9, Mandy was in on the murders. All the boys love Mandy Lane. So one-time high school misfit Mandy Lane, Amber Heard, finds herself coveted by the popular kids as she grows into an attractive young woman. She joins her new friends for a weekend away at a remote ranch where they come under attack from a hooded serial killer. That's all set up for the twist where it turns out that Mandy was in on the murders the whole time. The murders were being committed by her old best friend in revenge for the way the high school alphas have treated them over the years. But it doesn't really work, and it kind of reflects the problems of the rest of the film. It's just trying way too hard to be smart and edgy when really the film's just a very simple slasher flick. It doesn't make sense that Mandy would play innocent all the way to the end when she had her victims where she wanted them for so long, and so far from civilization. Why not just kill them anytime? It could have been so easy. It's like Mandy's never slaughtered high school students before. Rookie mistakes, girl, these are rookie mistakes. But seriously, all these lapses in logic just undermine Mandy's character and all the impact the twist might have had in the first place. Number 8, the whole religious cult thing, Kill List. So the setup for this one is semi-retired hitman Jay is lured back onto the job with his old friend Gal for a lucrative contract taking out 3 seemingly unrelated individuals for a shadowy organization. After some strange, unnerving circumstances earlier in the job, things get utterly bizarre when the final mark on the list leads Jay and Gal to some sort of occult ceremony. This ultimately sees Jay forcibly masked and thrown into a ritualistic knife fight with a masked hunchback. But once he wins the fight, his fatally wounded opponent is uncloaked to reveal his own wife Shell with their son strapped to her back. Now, it's one thing for a film to take a left field turn late in the day, but there has to be some sort of internal logic to the proceedings. Kill List just feels like someone made it up on the spot. The cult and their motivations make no sense whatsoever. Particularly nonsensical is how the dying Shell appears to be in on the cult's business, laughing as she dies. But why then did she open fire on the attacking cult members earlier on, when Jay wasn't even there? Again, the film's trying to be edgy, but it just doesn't work out if they don't set up the twist in advance. Otherwise, it just comes out of nowhere and feels weird rather than shocking. Number 7, Apes Conquered Earth, Planet of the Apes 2001. So in this film, astronaut Leo Davidson is accidentally sucked through a wormhole which takes him to a far-off world in the distant future where militant simians rule with an iron fist, and humanity is enslaved. The twist is, after fighting his way to get off the planet, Leo goes back through the wormhole and returns home, only to find that the same apes have taken over there, and a statue of the evil General Fade is sitting where the Lincoln Memorial should be in Washington, D.C. Okay, so Tim Burton and co. didn't want to directly recreate the original 1968 Planet of the Apes, hence they avoided the familiar twist that the planet was actually Earth all along. That's cool. However, given the fame of the original's conclusion, plus the fact that twist endings were kind of in fashion after The Sixth Sense, they clearly felt that they needed a climactic surprise, but the one they settled on, it's just dumb. We're meant to believe that Thade somehow got through the wormhole before Leo went further back in time and conquered Earth, or at least America. Like, there's just no way he could have done that. I mean, there's nothing more to say really, it just doesn't make a lick of sense. Number 6, Maya's a villain. Oh wait, no she isn't. Nailed it. So in Iron Man 3, when Tony Stark threatens terrorist leader the Mandarin, he's suddenly visited by Old Flame Maya, a scientist who's been working with Stark rival Killian on the Deadly Extremist project. Later on, Maya and Pepper escape, and Maya seems to be regretful for working on Extremist, but then she hands Pepper directly over to Killian, revealing that she's just one of the bad guys after all. However, just as Killian moves to use Extremist on Pepper, Maya has a sudden change of heart, and not long thereafter, Killian just shoots her. Unfortunately, the fumbling of Maya is one of the biggest black marks on Marvel's record. Infamously, she was at one point intended to be the principal villain of Iron Man 3, but the studio caved over concerns about toy sales, and so the focus shifted to Pierce's Killian. As such, Maya's whole character arc is a futile dead end, wasting a potentially interesting character and a fine actress in Rebecca Hall. Number 5, it's really set in the present, the village. So, at some unspecified point in centuries gone by, an isolated woodland community in North America deliberately cuts itself off from the rest of the world, whilst living in fear of mysterious monsters which stalk the woods. This is the plot of The Village. But when tragedy strikes, young blind woman Ivy must venture beyond the woods for help. Okay, so for the twists. First off, it turns out that there are no monsters. These are merely costumes worn by the village elders to keep their children in line and to hide them from the truth. It's actually the present day, and the village, found in the 1970s by hippies, exists in the center of a wildlife preserve. I mean, come on guys, you know we couldn't get through a list like this without an M. Night Shyamalan coming into it at least once. This 2004 film was the director's 4th film in 5 years, and by this point the climactic twist was such a signature that everyone knew it was coming in one form or another. Now, to be fair, that doesn't make it bad on its own merits, but while the conclusion of the film tries to make it all seem logical, for example, payments are made to the government to keep the skies above the village a no-fly zone, it all just seems too unfeasible and leaves the whole film feeling just kind of pointless. It's the same with the monsters turning out to be the village elders, it just kind of robs all the tension. Ideally, a twist should up the stakes, rather than reveal that there were not really any stakes for the whole film. Number 4, the superpowers are all in your head, I swear. Glass. You guys already know, on a list like this, M. Night's gotta show up more than once. He's the king of twists, some good, some bad, and Glass, unfortunately it lands in the latter category. First off though, M. Night had the admittedly cool idea of dissecting superhero powers and moralities in Glass, but his execution involves discarding the very reality of both his preceding films. So, backing up, 2000's Unbreakable dealt with Bruce Willis's David Dunn, realizing he's not only invulnerable and has super strength, but he can also demonstrate telepathic powers. In Split, James McAvoy's 23 personality The Horde has one that's a literal, muscle-expanding beast that can crawl on walls and squeeze people to death. So, what's the premise of Glass then? Well, it's for Sarah Paulson's Dr. Ellie Staple to convince all 3 of these guys that their power sets are just in their heads. The movie tries to say that David could have assumed where some hostages he saved were, or that the beast survived being shot because the gun's cartridges were old? Seriously? But none of it really works because their powers are so effortlessly demonstratable. David Dunn has super strength. Just pick up the chair you're sitting on, mate. Bend one of the metal legs. Done. You've proved yourself super. So to be real, the twist that maybe it could have been all in their heads just straight up avoids addressing basic logical inconsistencies that even a casual film fan would have noticed on their first watch. Number 3, John Harrison is really calm. Star Trek Into Darkness. In the first sequel to the rebooted Star Trek, Captain Kirk takes the USS Enterprise into Forbidden Territory to capture John Harrison, a terrorist responsible for the deaths of many Starfleet officers. The big twist is that John Harrison reveals he is actually Khan, leader of a clan of genetically engineered super beings who have spent centuries in suspended animation. The thing is, fan service can be such a double-edged sword, as Trekkies everywhere were pretty outraged by Star Trek Into Darkness's use of Khan. In fairness, it was more to do with how the film was publicized throughout its production, with numerous official denials that Cumberbatch was playing Khan. Subsequently, the final film left a lot of fans feeling cheated by this needless subterfuge. Beyond this though, the revelation of Khan's true identity is pretty meaningless, as in this new alternate timeline, the young Enterprise crew have never even heard of him before. It just feels like a crass attempt to capitalize on the continuing popularity of the character from the original 1960s TV series and 1982's Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, probably the most widely loved Star Trek movie. Number 2, take your pick really, the Cloverfield Paradox. So the setup is an experiment on an orbiting space station accidentally teleports the station and its crew to a parallel universe. The twists are, well, there's a lot of them. As if the space station hopping universes wasn't enough, the accident also leads to a slew of random reality warping events on board, as well as the unleashing of hell back on Earth in the form of attacks from giant monsters. However, it doesn't really work because the Cloverfield Paradox's excessive twists are the perfect example of films over-egging the pudding. Yes, that is an expression, according to my script. Perhaps the film in its initial form as the God Particle might have been alright, but producer J.J. Abrams' insistence on retrofitting it into the Cloverfield movies, and worse yet, attempting to form a coherent link across the very loosely related films, pretty much backfires. And when the final seconds cement the link to the original 2008 Cloverfield via the sudden emergence of a gargantuan Clovey, it's just too mental for words. Still, at least now the aliens from the end of 10 Cloverfield Lane don't seem quite so crazy in comparison. Number 1. Blofeld is Bond's adoptive brother, Spectre. In Spectre, Bond is hot on the trail of an ultra-secretive criminal organization named Spectre, headed up by a man from his past, Franz Overhauser. The big twist comes in the form of Franz being Bond's adoptive brother. Jealous of Bond for stealing his father's affections, Franz set out to ruin Bond's life, which is ultimately the entire purpose of his gargantuan evil organization, which was also covertly responsible for the adversaries Bond faced off against in the previous 3 films. Also, Franz changed his name to Ernest Stavro Blofeld. But it's just a bit silly. Not only does it beg a belief that Blofeld could have been behind literally everything bad that happened to Bond in the Craig years, but for the primary motivation of this global crime syndicate to be the persecution of one lowly spy? All because of some daddy issues? No way, man. People with real daddy issues go into the entertainment business, not counter-espionage. And that's not even touching on the pointlessness of revealing Franz as Blofeld in the final act, given the name Blofeld means nothing in the context of the Craig-era timeline.